Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainability Simply Put Talk series. In our seventh episode, we have very special guest, Kristina Hunter, all the way from Canada, from the other part of the world. She teaches people how to do better, live better, and feel better through sustainable well being and green living. And I came across her work through her podcast that is Live Well Green, and it's excellent podcast, and that's how we got connected. So welcome Christina into this program where we will explore sustainability. Thank you so much for agreeing for this record.
It's so nice to be here, Dhananjay. I really appreciate the invitation, and I just love talking to people all over the world. And what a privilege and pleasure it is to be connecting with you so far away, and yet here we are getting to know each other. So it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I would like to start with your short introduction, please, if you can introduce yourself in short.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. So my name is Kristina Hunter. As you mentioned, I do have a podcast. It's called Live Well Green, and it's all about sustainability and helping you to figure out how to make an impact and how to get past that eco-anxiety, grief, and overwhelm that we can feel that can really stop us from taking effective environmental action so that we can actually be the leaders that the world needs in order to create a more sustainable and just future. So that's what I love to talk about and research and work on. I spent 20 years teaching sustainability at the local university here, and I loved doing that. And I had probably about 10,000 students in those years, and it was a real gift and pleasure in order to be able to do that. And I decided that I needed to go bigger and speak more broadly about this outside of the confines of the academic structure. So that's what I'm doing here. And I help to educate people about sustainability and mentor, especially professional women, on how to make the impact that they know they are meant to make in this realm.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. The number of students that you have empowered, that's really huge.
It's a joy.
So I understand that achieving sustainability, yes, it's a tough goal, but during that we have to solve a lot of problems. And I remember you talk a lot about wicked problems, right? So first I would like to know about what are the wicked problems, and then maybe you can suggest us how we can solve them.
Okay. I have been circling around this phrase of wicked problems. It's been around for decades, actually, but it's become more popular lately as we've acknowledged that we are trying to struggle with a lot of these wicked problems. A wicked problem is a problem that is very complex. There's no one obvious solution, and often the remedies are things that are different from one location to another. And sometimes people don't even agree on what the problem is, like what are the boundaries of it, what's the scope, and certainly there's lack of agreement on the approach. And often there's no real one solution because they're not sort of point source things. So if we think about poverty, we would approach poverty differently in different areas of the world. You know, we would approach poverty in your country very different than in mine, because the issues are different and the circumstances of people are different, and some of the government institutions are different, and the social services are different, and so on. So we can think of that as an example of a wicked problem. So there are these complex issues that are things that we really do want to solve, but they have not been, really effectively managed on a broad scale, partly because they are so difficult to figure out and to tackle. So in addition to this name wicked problems, then these social scientists came up with an additional term called super wicked problems. And they classified, environmental problems as super wicked problems. And they have some added features in that super wicked problems are things that go beyond just that. They have the characteristics of a significant deadline on finding a solution, which we certainly all feel, I think, in terms of climate change and loss of biodiversity and pollution, atmospheric pollution, water pollution, and plastic pollution. They also have the issue of no central authority dedicated to finding a solution. So we have multiple governments needing to sort of all weigh in and work on it. And sometimes those seeking to solve the problem are also causing it, right? The governments, the industries, even individuals, we all have impacts. So that makes it even more complex. And sometimes there are certain policies that actually irrationally impede future progress. A prime example on that front, I think, is subsidies that our governments give to fossil fuel and other highly polluting industries. So there's some real impediments to that for various reasons that might include historical and political and socioeconomic, etc. So those are really tough problems, right? And that's what we're dealing with when we think about environment. Yeah.
So absolutely. So in sustainability, whatever issues that we are looking at, so I guess they are wicked or super wicked problems, right? So yes. What is solution? How to solve these issues, and what is a new approach that you would suggest to solve these issues?
Yeah. Well, I think we would all benefit from really taking a page from a technique called systems thinking. And systems thinking is something I know that is near and dear to your heart. And so some of your subscribers and listeners and viewers would also be already a little bit aware of the idea of systems thinking. But really, systems thinking is an ideal approach to wicked problems because, you know, Wikipedia says systems thinking is just a way of making sense of the complexity of the world. So in terms of looking at it in wholes and relationships, rather than splitting it down into its individual parts. And so systems thinking is actually designed to effectively approach these complex problems that we have, like wicked problems. So there are lots of benefits when we think about system thinking. We consider more broadly the issue at hand, and it allows us then to, you know, kind of pan out and get a greater view of things. And this allows us to see more context, more perspective on the problem, right? So why is the government subsidizing fossil fuels? Or why are we still clutching to the fossil fuel industry? Well, there are lots of complexities there, including cost and existing industries and the need for jobs in that industry that are currently employing people, and, you know, lack of economically viable alternatives. You know, like there's just lots of complexities. So we get to see that better when we pan out a little bit. And that also allows us to see boundaries, and we can more effectively define the issue. So we say, okay, what is the issue with transitioning away from fossil fuels in the next so many years within this country or within this particular industry. And that will allow us to better understand the issue we want to tackle and how it might change over time. You know, how can we begin to better approach the situation as things evolve, as our understanding evolves, and as pressures mount in terms of economic pressures and, you know, public concerns, etc. And this idea of systems thinking lets us understand linkages and interactions between elements within the system. That's really key to approaching these wicked problems, is to try to understand those linkages. And that really gives us more choices in order to see what's available to us for solutions. And we can identify those actions that are real levers for change, where you should put your efforts, because we all have personally limited, you know, time and energy to put into solving these things, whether it's, you know, part of our paid employment or a side gig. You know, we all have, you know, constraints on our time and energy. And then governments also have constraints in terms of their efforts and the economic constraints and so on. So, and multiple demands. So we can choose the actions that are going to have the biggest effect. And that can be really useful. And seeing all of these things more clearly allows us to see the different players and maybe allow us to think more creatively about potential solutions. So we can think a little bit differently and see, oh, maybe there's something that I don't know that somebody else can illuminate to help us solve this. It's not just this one option. There are multitudes of ways of approaching it. So that's what systems thinking is really good at.
And I'm really happy to share with all that our next episode is about systems thinking. So we will be having one expert from Australia who will be talking about systems thinking. So yeah, please stay tuned. While talking about systems thinking, yes, definitely it's important to understand the interlinkages between different elements and how we can get the leverage for the solution. Here, I want to ask you one question. As you were a professor in university, right, teaching students.
Yeah.
When we talk about systems thinking, so what I have seen in India is these courses are available for postgraduate students. Yeah. And maybe some colleges are having there is some course on graduate level as well. But what do you think the viability of bringing systems thinking at school level? Maybe can we add this one competency at school level also, looking at the super wicked problems that we have to solve in really short deadline that we have?
I love that question. That's brilliant. Dhananjay, you really hit on something. You know, I actually think that it would be very useful to bring systems thinking even before we get to post-secondary. Primary or even secondary education could certainly include elements of systems thinking, because really we all deal with wicked problems, right? If we have a situation where you know, somebody has a hard time always getting out of bed in the morning, you know, this can be actually a wicked problem. If there are lots of complexities, they've tried to solve it lots of different ways, all sorts of alarms or, you know, whatever, and they still have a hard time. But there's complexity. So why does this person have a hard time getting out of bed? So this might resonate with, you know, some of your listeners, right? Why do you have a hard time getting out of bed? What's going on there? Well, maybe you didn't go to bed early enough. And maybe there's a reason for that. Like you were chatting with your friends online, or you had too much schoolwork to do, or you had too much, you know, work around the house to do, or you were just you spent some time earlier in the day having fun, and that meant you had to do all your schoolwork later in the day, and then your brain was just not able to slow down for you, or
that happens a lot.
Right? There are lots and lots of reasons. It can be thought of as a little mini wicked problem. And systems thinking can be brought to bear on this when we just pan out a little bit. Like I like the owl's view. You know, the owl, he or she is hunting, right? So they're up in the sky, but they're not way up in the sky like an eagle, right? But they're higher above the trees, but not so high that they can't see a mouse, right? And they're hunting. And so they have more broader perspective, but they can still see the fine details, and they really have a good view. So if we allow ourselves to pan out a little bit to the owl's view, to see the bigger situation, it allows us to look at those connections. Well, why is that happening? Why is it always so hard for me to get out of bed? Well, it's probably because I haven't slept enough. And why is that happening? You know, those things. So, you know, if we can't change when school starts in the morning, maybe we can change when we go to bed in order to make that easier. I mean, it would be great to change when school starts too, for teens especially, who have this biological clock that's shifted a little bit. But, you know, these are things that everybody encounters, truthfully. We all have our own little wicked problems. And I think educating at all levels around approaches to that is really effective. And one of the easiest ways is just to first think about the owl's view, think about that, owl or hawk that's doing that hunting from that level, so that we can see a little bit more and understand why it's going on. Then we can understand what to tackle. Once you see it more clearly, then you can think about, oh, how can I solve this? And who else is facing this? And maybe my, family can help me in some way on this situation, that kind of thing.
Right.
So there can be solutions that we can deal with at any level that could employ systems thinking.
Right. So definitely we need to explore in that, how to bring it to the students, to the children's level. And when you explained about the systems thinking for children or for primary students, so you talked about getting hard time, right? So what I resonated is there is a term called eco-anxiety that is amongst many youth. So as you are expert into this field about wellness, so how do we all manage about eco-anxiety? And maybe we have a lot of things to do, limited time, and again there is stress related to environment. So how do we cope up with that?
That is such a good question, because I think most of us and most of the people here on your channel who are engaged in this topic, we have some level of anxiety about it. Why else would you be here engaged in this material? Because it's a real and present danger concerning today and our very near future. So what can we do with that feeling? And first, I really want everybody who encounters this to first go easy on themselves and understand that that's natural to feel this concern. There's no wonder we feel that way. We're human beings. We're connected to nature. As much as we feel like, nature's outside and I live this inside life with technology and, all this stuff, we're actually part of nature, biologically, right? We just engage with nature every time you take a breath, this is the outside world coming into your body. Every time you sip water, this is nature coming into your body. Every time you eat food, this is actually becoming part of your cells, so we have to remember that that's okay to feel empathy and even sadness or concern over what's happening to nature. And that's perfectly normal. So if we start with that, then that allows us to validate those emotions and to say, that's okay to feel that way. We don't want to get stuck there though. It's a really good idea to let yourself process that emotion. Actually name it, say how it feels, give it a name. And even if it resides somewhere in your body, think about that. Maybe you want to write it down or say it out loud, and really name what's happening to you. Oh, my chest feels tight when I think about the environment. Or sometimes it feels like a pit in my stomach. We have those emotions that are really situated in our body, and naming it can help us to give it validation. And then we can actively release it. And it doesn't mean that we're not concerned about it, but we let the emotion pass through us. And that's okay. It's not that it won't come back again, but we allow it to go. And you can think about it in your mind, like, some seed from a tree, it's just, you sort of see it float away, or a dandelion, it floats away and it leaves us and it goes away with the breeze, and we can just blow the dandelion flowers and see them float off. And that can be very helpful for us to allow that emotion to float away, and it can come back, and we can let it come back as well. But in the meantime, then we get to think about it more with our mind and think about the actions that we want to take and how to take action that's really meaningful, because with our limited time and energy, we want to think about what we can do. And I really, really love the idea of people taking action that aligns with them. So if you think about the actions that are most effective, these are actually the things that we can do that also give us joy and where we have some skills. Okay, so I like speaking. I have 20 years experience of teaching, more than 20 years. And so that's where I align my actions, because first of all, I have some skills in the area. And second of all, I like it. It brings me happiness. So we want to find actions that where we have some skills. And, some people might say, I don't have a lot of skill. That's okay. You do have skills. We all have them, and you build those things, right? You build them as you practice them. And then what about the things that you really like doing, right? Do you like being outdoors? Well, maybe this is an outdoor activity. Do you really like animals? Well, maybe this is action for animals. Do you really like being on social media? There's lots that you can do on social media, right? So we think about that. Align your skills and your actions with something that the world needs and where you have some leverage, right? I used that term before when we talked about wicked problems. And this is exactly where we can focus that now. Where do I have leverage? We think about the lever as the thing that makes work easier, right? You use this tool to lift a heavy rock, something like that. You use a pry bar to lift a heavy rock. That's a lever. So we can think about that. Where do I have a lever? Where do I already have influence? Where do I already have input? Maybe in my classroom at school. Where do I have input? In my own home. I have input in my own social media realm. I have input in my workplace. I have input, I have different levers that I can pull. So I'm going to work with those things first because it's going to be more joyful. You're going to have more fun at it, right? You're not going to feel like you're, going uphill all the time. And you're also going to have a bigger impact when you're enjoying it and you're already making use of the skills that you have and where you can influence it. Where the world needs you is, in every realm. There's so many things that we can do around sustainability. And I used to have students say, oh, well, I'm really passionate about animals. Is that okay? Does that fit? I'm like, of course it fits. Of course it fits. Sustainability is defined very broadly. And I know you talk about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and those 17 different aspects. And sustainability and that definition encompasses poverty reduction, equality rights, education, especially for women and girls. And we talk about all kinds of aspects of sustainability, including good governance and as well as life on land and life below water and clean air and sustainable cities and agriculture. So anywhere that you look that you feel passionate about, there is an opportunity for you to take effective action. But overlapping your skills, what brings you joy, and where you have leverage, I really love that approach. I call that the ikigai. It's based on a Japanese term called ikigai, which is thinking about how to focus your efforts for an effective and happy career and life.
Yes, absolutely. So what you shared, that action first is accepting about the anxiety or whatever feeling that we have, and then action is very important. So dealing with mind, right? So yes, so that is really great solution. And here I would like to know about your action, and that is Live Well Green podcast. So I would like you to please share your journey of the podcast and your action. Yeah.
What a fun thing. Oh my gosh. I thought, I'm a teacher. I know how to teach. It's no problem. I had to learn all this technology and figure out podcasting, as I'm sure you have too. And that's been really interesting. And I love speaking to people and podcasting. And I started just before the pandemic. So I would go to my local library and go to the recording studio there for free. It was really great. And the pandemic hit and I had to figure out how to podcast at home. And now I do it at home in my closet. So I have to have pictures of people to look at. But that's all right.
It's a tough journey. It's a tough journey, actually. At the start, we feel that it's not possible. Then somehow it's difficult and then it becomes easy.
Yeah. Right? It's so interesting. It is so interesting to see that. And I think that's such a good lesson for all of us to maintain that growth mindset, it's called, right? To understand that this is not a forever situation, that it's hard right now. And we've done hard things before and now they're easy. Right? Like that is such a useful lesson for all of us. And I think we really can apply that to our sustainability actions. It seems hard at first and we have to learn how to do it. We have to work out the kinks, the difficult situation of it. And then it becomes easy. It becomes normal, right? It becomes our regular life. And so like anything can be applied in that way. In my own journey, I used to, I really enjoy drinking milk and eating, yogurt and cottage cheese and so on. And I said, my mother comes from Germany in the area of Switzerland. I said, I think I have chocolate and yogurt running through my veins, it's normal. And I looked at the environmental impact of dairy and it really made me concerned. And so I've cut way back and I started drinking oat milk and all this stuff, and at first it was hard and I had to learn a lot and try all kinds of different types of non-dairy milks, and then it becomes easy. Now it's normal for me, right? That's what's in my coffee right now is oat milk. So
wow, that's great. So you're a vegan, right? Are you a vegan?
I'm not vegan, but I often eat vegan.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still fall in the category of flexitarian, which is minimal meat and and more fish as needed, and that kind of thing. So we all go stepwise, right? In our journey of learning, and podcasting was like that. And I think it's really useful for us all to think about that stepwise process. We're not just one thing, I'm not just this person. I get to choose and evolve. And we all do in terms of our behavior and who we are and how we identify too, how we think of ourselves in terms of our behavior on sustainability. Sometimes somebody might say, I'm not a person who walks. And then they turn out to love walking, like this type of thing. We get to evolve, and it's our privilege to do that. And so that's an important thing to remember, because that's really up here in our minds, how much we can grow. It's only us when we think we have to fit into one box of what we can or cannot do, because it's really not the case. Everybody has unlimited potential and possibilities within them. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. So everyone is on their own journey of becoming sustainable, and you're right. So I agree with you that we should take small steps, because abrupt change will not be sustainable. So it may be, so it may be for 2 days or 5 days or 1 week, 1 month, you can do it, but later on it will not be integrated into your lifestyle. So so small changes will definitely lead to sustainable living as well. And while talking about sustainable living, I would like to ask you what an ordinary person can do for environment. Maybe you can give us some tips which are low-hanging fruits that everyone can get benefit from.
Okay. So when you say ordinary person, you mean, in your audience and
audience. So when I say ordinary people, so I'm referring to those who have not trained in environment. So maybe they are not from environmental science, right? So they might have just some introduction in their school, in their curriculum, but they are not that much aware about environmental issues, and just they are getting to know about all these aspects. So maybe the beginner level.
I love that. We all have these circles of influence that we talked about that a little bit, where you have the levers. But our circles are interesting. We have the immediate circle, like the inner circle is always ourselves and our person. And as let's say as an adult, we have like the most control over our person. And but even as a minor, you still have some control over your person. And then we move out from there, and we have some control, lesser usually, but some control maybe, or influence, I should say, over those near us, our family, our friends, and our colleagues, you know, those people, we can talk with them, we can have influence there. And then we go out further and we have some influence in our community, and, you know, our neighbors, and our the way our community is run in terms of the, you know, community centers and the local gardens and that kind of thing. We have some influence there. And then it goes broader to our local government and our national or state level government and national government, and then people around the world we might have some influence over in terms of, you know, connecting on social media, etc. So we have these layers of influence, and it's always easiest to start with ourselves, with what we do, our own personal behaviors and our choices around what we learn, and just educating ourselves on an issue. And I think that's really probably the most important thing to start with. If you're concerned about something, if you're curious about an issue, is learn about it. Get informed. Learn about who's doing what and what's the real problem. Because it might not be what you first think it is, right? And it might not be the most important thing after all. So learning about it, I think, is a really good starting place. And then you get to choose your actions around it. If you're going to take some steps in terms of your own behavior, how you live your life, what you eat, what you do, that type of thing, how you educate yourself. And then you get to go further too, right? Do you want to talk to others about it? Do you want to ask others to go on this journey with you? Maybe you can encourage them or challenge them or educate them on how to eat more meat-free meals, or how to conserve water, or how to cool their homes effectively without as much use of electricity. You might want to educate yourself on where your electricity comes from, right? How is that generated? Is it with hydroelectric power? Is it coal fired? So educating yourself and then working to influence. And I think sometimes, especially students, and I saw this even in my university students, they weren't always feeling like they had a lot of power, you know? But I always wanted to remind them they have a surprising amount of power. The university administrators are quite interested in what students think and feel, because ultimately they're supposed to be serving them, you know? And so I think that we should always think about that. Your teachers are actually quite interested in your concerns and what concerns you, and your principals and your school board and your politicians. Don't be afraid of the power of a letter or an email or a tweet that says, I want this. I want this for my future. It's your job to do this for me, and demand that of your political leaders. Now, shall we be expecting change immediately? We can work for it, but don't be disheartened if it doesn't happen right away. Every little step counts. And you know that phrase, the tipping point, or sometimes people say the straw that broke the camel's back, you know, the one that made the change. That doesn't happen on the first straw. That happens after many, 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 many straws pile up. Now, we don't want to break any camel's backs, but we do want to remind ourselves that your letter is still important. Your tweet, your message to that person in authority matters, because you don't know where it's in that pile, and it's all piling up to change. So do not get disheartened if you don't see it right away. We have to keep working at it and persevere, and really protect our own wellness and respect those emotions, and knowing that you are part of a greater movement. You're part of something that so many people, millions and millions, billions probably, are engaged in globally, right? We're all, like so many people, we care deeply about our home, and that's Earth, right? And that's very natural for all of us to feel. Every human being feels that at some level, right? So you're not alone. You're not alone, but what you do is really, really important, because lots of people aren't as active as you are. They're not taking the time. They're too busy, engaged in other things, or maybe they have blinders on and they're just looking at their phone and looking at fashion, and they're just looking at, you know, the things they want in this world, and they're not paying attention to the impact it has in the environment and what that means for the future. So it's really important to tap into that realization. You're not alone. Lots and lots of us are actively on it. And even if you don't get the outcome you want right away, you're still part of piling up all those straws to make the change.
Yes,
That
that's such a
Yeah.
lovely advice, because I really liked your suggestion that you should start with yourself, right? So that is the something where we have a full control, and absolutely. So we should all start working on ourselves. So maybe learning, knowing the exact issue, and then we can solve where are the leverage points where we can get the maximum outcome for our efforts. That comes to end of this episode. But before leaving, so I would like to ask you how our viewers can connect with you, how they can follow your work. So if you can share that, that would be wonderful.
Of course, Dhananjay, I would love to hear from people. I absolutely love that. I'm on social media at KH Flourishing, KHFLOURISHING. And I have a website, KristinaHunterFlourishing.com, Kristina with a K. And of course, the podcast is Live Well Green. And that's wherever you get your podcasts. And I would really love to hear from anybody. Just feel free to drop me a note on social media, on my website, or any other way that you get in touch, even through Dhananjay. So I really appreciate that. Feel free to comment below and I will respond. I just would love to hear from you, and I certainly enjoy my role in helping others to help them to become the leaders that we need for this a more sustainable and just society that we're all working towards. So well done, Dhananjay, and kudos to you, and a real high five for the work you are doing in educating and working with others in terms of helping to create a more sustainable future. And to everyone who's here, wow, you're putting in the time and effort to be here. That is a huge step forward. So I'm just going to give you a big virtual high five and say thank you for being here. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Kristina. It's wonderful to discuss all these topics with you, and as a expert in this field and as a mentor for us all. So you are really an inspiration. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Deeply appreciate the opportunity, and we'll be in touch. Okay.